Hello and welcome to the Crafty Pint podcast. I'm James and no Will with me this week. We've got a slightly different show and as such a slightly different intro. I have with me instead Luke McCarthy, one of the country's leading drinks writers specialising in whiskey and spirits, former bartender at some of the country's best whiskey bars, potentially future bartender, and educator as well. Avid readers of the Crafty Pint will have read one of Luke's articles for us a few weeks ago on the trials and tribulations of the Australian whiskey industry. And we took the opportunity when at Grainstock recently, where there were both brewers and distillers and bakers for that matter, there to sit down with, I guess, one of the real characters from the local whiskey industry for a chat, which is this week's podcast. Before we get to that, though, hello, Luke.
Hello, great to be with you, mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not at all. Yes, I figured before we get to the main chat with Tim, it'd be good to learn a bit more about yourself, your sort of history as a writer, journo, and with, I guess, your connection with the spirits world. Did that sort of start as a behind the bar, or how did it all come about?
I like connection to the spirits world, coming just off Halloween. It started, I studied a Bachelor of Writing and Literature before, and sort of during and after I was in bars and working in bars. And I started a bar called Chez Regine in 2012, the forerunner to Whiskey and Almonds. Mm-hmm. And yeah, very quickly everything exploded with whiskey here in Australia and globally. It probably kicked off a little bit before that internationally. And so, yeah, we suddenly found ourselves in this swarming mosh pit of amazing whiskiness that just exploded. And
swarming mosh pit of amazing whiskiness sounds like it could be an OC's album or something.
It was like that because the first 6 months of Whiskey and Almond was insane. Yeah. Brooke, Jules, Evan, myself, we were pushed to the limit. Four of us just.
Did you see what was coming? Were you aware that there was going to, obviously, there was a huge whiskey global industry well established, but could you feel what was happening locally at the time?
Absolutely. We could feel it.
Yeah.
There was huge international interest in what was happening in Australia, and I mean, God, within that 4 or 5 year period, we had some of the top people in whiskey all around the world come into that bar. And it's incredible beer events that we were able to put on as well.
I remember some of the early Brooklyn ones during Good Beer Week, Garrett Oliver coming.
The Garrett Oliver one. That's still probably like the tops for me in terms of tastings. That was absolutely incredible. And right around that time of that tasting, actually, I got asked to write, the National Drinks column for the Age and Sydney Morning Herald, which was still it was sort of, towards the death of print then. And so
I was writing for Epicure around about the same time as well, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then everything sort of snowballed from there. Not long after that, I published a book, The Australian Spirits Guide, which was sort of the first, but bizarrely, the first book to ever look into Australian spirits production in its own right. And it's just continued on from there through writing for various publications overseas, developing a website here, and with the publication recently of a couple more books on spirits. So, it's all happening.
Yeah, and I guess if people hadn't read the article, which we'll link to in the show notes for this week anyway, sort of summarise what you were sort of getting across with the piece that you wrote for us a few weeks ago. Yeah,
that was a fascinating one because, as we've discussed, and I think as a lot of people are aware, there are some similarities between what's happened with craft beer and what's happened with the Australian spirits, especially whiskey market. And so we're trying to sort of look at those links and connections and commonalities, open them up and chart where Australian whiskey has come from and where it might be going. I think there are some concerns from some people in the industry about, I guess, the growth, the lack of growth, or what's going to happen to certain businesses that might have been, cutting it fine prior to COVID. I don't necessarily see it that way. Tim, who we're going to introduce in a moment, there are some people in the industry who have, I guess, some concerns. I think it comes from a point of care generally about hopefully the industry continuing to grow and continuing to move forward. And that's what we were sort of looking to get at in the article, looking at some of the recent VAs within the distilling world, some of the businesses that have struggled. The beauty of it is there's still so much brilliance to get around in terms of Australian whiskey and Australian spirits. The push over the next 2 to 3 years that I'm seeing in terms of marketing and spreading Australian spirits to both local and international audiences is going to be really exciting to get around. So trying to capture that some of that in the article. I think we pretty much got there. So.
Yeah, great. And Tim was one of the people you spoke to for the article, who's our main guest this week. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Tim Duckett and why you spoke to him for the piece?
Yeah, absolute character, Tim Duckett. Anyone who knows him knows that, he's fantastic to be around. He has a lot to say. I tend to think he puts his opinion forward really, really well and really intelligently. Maybe after a few too many whiskeys, less so. But yeah, I've known Tim since my earliest time in the spirits industry. One of my sort of goosebump moments was tasting his second whiskey release the Beast, right out of the barrel. Probably low 60s. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever tasted. It was a watershed bottling for Tasmanian and Australian whiskey at the time. No one had really seen anything like it. And so what Tim did in basically the late 90s is he started buying up some of the first casks that became commercially available from Larkham, from Sullivan's Cove. And he just sat on those casks for a very long time. And, so Tim is an independent bottler. He doesn't have his own distillery, as he points out in the interview.
No, I'd love to claim that was deliberate me sort of a bit of sort of, putting myself in the headspace of a beer drinker, not knowing the difference. But no, I just made a mistake with my very first question of the interview, which I guess starts it off in the gets Tim going at least.
Totally, yeah. It hooked him straight in, didn't it? And so what Tim has done is follow in the fashion of very famous independent bottlers overseas. So independent bottlers have a really central, pivotal, and I guess really progressive role in whiskey, and especially rum bottling over the last sort of 12 especially, but then going well back over the last sort of 3-4 decades. And so Tim, I guess, was very aware of this. Bottlers like Gordon and MacPhail in Scotland, William Cadenheads, and especially the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. If you're in whiskey in Australia, you'll know the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and some of the people running that organisation. They've done a great job here over many years. I still remember vividly Tim opening a drawer full of bottles and drawers full of bottles of SMWS bottling, some of which now are worth huge money and very rare. And so he was a devoted fan of these particular companies and the way they went about it. And I think as these casks that he had acquired in Tasmania sat there and evolved and got better and better, he then decided, well, it's time to open them up and release them to the public. And the way he's gone about that since 2011, 2012 has been really creative and fun and innovative. And he's basically captured the sort of spirit and ethos of a lot of the best of the old school Scottish bottlers, and that's why people love him for it here.
Yeah, and there's certainly a bit of a sense of humour around the names and labelling of, and it's Heartwood is his brand.
Yeah.
Well, the main brands are the two brands, but yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. So his private, personal, very idiosyncratic brand is Heartwood, and he then formed Tasmanian Independent Bottlers. Sort of as a result of a lot of criticism, because people were just like, we can't get your whiskey. It was so highly sought after that the volumes and the wackiness and the way he went about it meant that some of the bottlings were selling out sort of 4 and 5 in advance of him even telling people what was coming. And so TIB was, I guess, his progression to sort of maybe create some whiskies that were a bit more palatable to a broader audience, and then to also offer some more bottlings so more people could enjoy them as well. So,
No, it was a great chat. Admittedly, sort of the morning after the first night of Grainstock, but no, he certainly had plenty to say. Also, with this week's show, we're recording this early because our producer's on his way to visit his family in the States, so there'll be no discussion of this week's news, I guess, but there's plenty to tuck into with Tim. And although this wasn't planned, it's actually turned out to be good timing with this week's episode, as this weekend there's a pretty special event for distillers taking place at Abbotsford Confit, Luke.
That's right, Whiskey Abbey, probably one of the top whiskey festivals on the Australian calendar, put on by the folks at Casa de Vinos. The lineup is always incredible. It's got a very special place, I think, in a lot of whiskey and spirits drinkers' hearts in Melbourne and probably Australia. Distillers travel from all over the country to attend, and indeed from internationally as well. So, yeah, if you're not familiar with it and you love whiskey, I guarantee, head down. You will be treated to a smorgasbord of whiskey brilliance. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Luke's done such a great job of convincing me to head along that I'm actually not going to be playing for the North Alphington Blacks Vets team this weekend, which is a real shame. Probably for the opposition. No, not really for art. So that's coming up at the weekend. Luke and I will be there, possibly even Will as well, if you've missed him from this week's intro. Before we get to the main show, obviously we're always looking for fresh nominations for our Bluestone Yeast Brewery of the Month, which you can do at craftypint.com/bluestone, and also if you'd like to nominate any good beer citizens from around the country, you can do so at craftypint.com/rallings. Thanks for joining us, Luke. Look forward to more chats and learning more about the spirits world over time. I believe you got me a bit of a reading list to tuck into over summer as well to get up to speed. But yeah, on with the show. And if you do enjoy it, please remember to like, subscribe, rate and review. Cheers.
If you're looking for the very best digitally printed beer cans in the business, you need to talk to the team at the Crafted Can Company. Serving breweries across Australia, the Crafted Can Company specialises in direct-to-can digital printing for small and medium order quantities, offering the ability to handle multiple designs, complex artwork and brilliant colours. All this with no minimum order quantity. For exceptional quality and competitive pricing, the Crafted Can Company has your can printing needs covered. Get in touch with the team and find out how the Crafted Can Company can bring your can designs to life. Visit craftedcan.com.au today.
Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, I'm sure many of our regular audience will know of you and Heartwood, but for those who don't, can you tell us a bit about yourself and, the distillery?
Okay, so I'm going to pull you up straight away.
Okay.
You used the word distillery.
Yes.
We're not a distillery.
You're a bottler.
We're an independent bottler. And so an independent bottler is one that buys either whiskey or new make from established distilleries and manages the product and produces the product themselves. So in our case, we buy new make from 20 distilleries in Australia and New Zealand, 25 different new makes. 25 different barrel types, mainly Australian and European fortifieds, and 7 different cooperages from around the world. And we make anything we like.
And that number's increased in the last few years?
No.
The 25, has it always been 25?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually probably, we've dropped off a couple and we've picked up a few. So we're looking at some more recent distilleries on the mainland to see if we can pick some new make up from them as well.
And what brought you to this world?
Look, I was an environmental consultant working in mining and construction and did habitat restoration and degraded land repair. And I was appointed to the Ben Lomond Ski Field Advisory Committee a long, long time ago. And Lynn and Bill Lark actually were part owners of the lodge on top of the mountain. And I got to meet them, and they said that they were going to make whiskey, and I said, well, I'll drink it. And that's how our relation started way back then, at the beginning of the industry. And when barrels first became commercially available in 1999, I started to buy them. And, of course, my other business as an environmental consultant was funding all my bad habits. So that's the origin, that's the start. Plus, I must have said, university, I always used to sit at the university bar, a bit of a barfly, but I'd always have a glass of water and a whiskey and a glass of water. I probably started on Famous Grouse, I reckon, and I would drink them separately. And that was probably the start of a very slippery slope downhill.
But early days in terms of Australian whiskey.
Early days in terms of Australian whiskey?
In terms of you get involved,
Yeah, so as I said, I purchased the first barrel in 1999, but because I had another business and another career, I didn't bottle till 2012 when the Mount Wellington release came out. And so I think we would say we weren't the first independent bottler to release, but we certainly established our storage and stockpile well before others.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting moment to come in when you did first bottle. It was probably that moment just before a lot of Tasmanian distilleries and a lot of mainland distilleries established themselves and exploded. So you first released at a really interesting moment. If you released a little bit earlier, it would have been interesting too. So
but like I say, whiskey is ready when it's ready, and you just and it is purely for us based on palate, and that seemed to be the most appropriate time for that particular release. Yeah, so and it was of Highland Holdings origin, so precursor to Sullivan's Cove, and it was for its time. I mean, I think I could make a better whiskey now, but at the time there was not anything really like that in the market either.
And the name Heartwood?
Heartwood, yeah. Okay, so I'm a dairy farmer's son from the northwest coast, far northwest corner of Tasmania. High rainfalls, very productive ground, nothing like the property sizes that you see where we are around here. And on the farms, my father had 3 farms, Blackwoods used to grow, and they had that. And you'll notice on our label, our Heartwood label, the tree, that's the shape they used to grow in out in the paddocks. And they were lovely trees. So I was going to call it Blackwood. malt whiskey company. But there was Lion Nathan had a winery called Blackwood in Western Australia. So I couldn't get that. And then I thought, okay, what's another Tasmanian timber? And I went, Blackheart. Blackheart at Sassafras. No, there was a rum distillery in New Zealand called Blackheart. And then Heartwood, which ultimately is probably the better name. And that's what the staves of barrels are made from, out of the centre of a tree. So we settled on that, and that became our name. And still the Blackwood logo, though, the tree, was part of our marketing and logo. Yeah.
There you go. And in terms of like, is there an underlying ethos like behind every? You know, is there a goal you have with every whiskey you make?
Yes, there is. I mean, I think, and I'll be talking about it later today, but consistency of quality is very, very important. And I think as an industry, sometimes we forget about what's in the bottle, and it's more important to do marketing. And I understand that, but for us, the release, the quality of our release, the quality of the whiskey in the bottle is the most important thing that that's what we base everything on. And quite often we'll be working on whiskies for 8 or 9 months and not happy with them. They go back through the system. Now, there's something interesting too. So a small distillery like Fanny's Bay in the north of Tasmania, if they've got a bad whiskey, they'll redistill it, right? Glenfiddich just hired it with sheer volume, right? We, as an independent bottler, we own it. So we have to fix it. So there's a lot of whiskey that we reject because distilleries might paint a lovely picture that everything's beer and skittles and all their whiskey's great. 40% of our whiskey in our bond store, and we're more selective on barrels and all sorts of and spirit than others, is not good enough to release. So we have to fix it. And that's part of what we do. And so we get all our releases, there's a consistent quality. All of them hopefully are a good drink. You might like some more than others, but generally we just try and produce a good drink, and that's it. We're not big thinkers, don't give us credit beyond that. Just a good drink.
How do you fix something that you don't think's right?
Oh, the famous Duckett process.
Yeah, okay.
How
much time have you got? How long have we been in it?
We're around with the last one, so let's go again.
How long you got? Numerous ways. Okay, so we do an assessment of our whiskey in October and November of every year, and all those that we think are going to nearly be ready. Those that will be good will be identified, but also a lot of faults are exacerbated over the summer months. So we usually decant the poorer whiskies at that time. We have a TIB whiskey called Ramblings of a Madman. Most of the whiskey is 7 to 10 years of age, and we identify those that are quite poor. So we rate our whiskey from 1 to 5. 1 is bottle now, and can you edit this?
Yeah, for sure.
So then 4s and 5s, fuck me, I've wasted all my money, right? And so we have to fix those. So we often will identify those with faults, and then we will blend them in a large vat. And just by dilution, you can often reduce the poor influence flavour profiles and things like that. And then we let it integrate, and then we put that out into other first fill barrels again. But then there are issues like tannin. What happens if I said to you in Australia, we've been filling our barrels at the wrong strength, 63.4% adopted from the Scottish model. In Australia, our ABVs go up with time. And in Scotland, they generally go down, and they drop down below the 60%. And below 60%, based on the research my son's been doing, you actually absorb more barrel sugars, right? So if ours continue to go up, we probably don't, we don't get that character from the barrel. So, some of our whiskies have been quite dry, and they've got up to 66, 67%. We've actually been breaking some of those down in the barrel to 55 to 58%. And within 2 weeks, you'll notice a dramatic change. So there we go. We're repairing things that are not really that drinkable to things that are much more palatable. Let's put it that way. And we've got I mean, we don't have many barrels compared to most, but we've identified 11 or 12 barrels like that, and we've used that process to fix that problem. And there are lots of other problems too that, dilution is a great one. Tannin, tannin, some people in Australia would call it a Australian characteristic. No, it's a fault. It's like sucking on a fence post. But there are ways to fix it if it hasn't gone too far.
So can a liquid be unfixed, unredeemable?
Yeah, I think some, particularly smaller cask maturation, you can get good whiskies out of small cask maturation, but if you don't monitor it and go too far, and it is just undrinkable. Yes. So just absolutely. Tannin is an acid. If you just dip it in there and your mouth dries out completely, you've got a problem.
Fence posts. One of the tasty notes. When it gets to fence post level, then you're in trouble.
And I served my apprenticeship as a farmer's son, so I know what it's sucking on a fence post. So I know what it's like. Yeah.
And so we've got to talk about the names. The names of the bottlings have courted controversy over the years. They've delighted and entertained a lot of people. How do you come up with the names? Maybe you can take us through some of the more creative and crazy ones you come up with.
Some of the names, look, I suppose I got to say who inspired me first. I would say Compass Box.
Yeah.
Righto. It was one of our base inspirations, if you like, and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I used to love their descriptions and love their names, and I thought we can do that too. And how I name them is I relate it to the process of making a particular whiskey and any other influences that may occur with comments from people such as yourself or Jules or other. There's a bloke called Ray Daniel, and here's a story for you. You'll see I've got in front of you a bottle of Strive for the Forbidden. All right,
with Latin underneath, I see.
Sorry,
with the Latin underneath as well.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's just my auntie taught Latin, so why not use it? Anyway, so basically the story for that is that I had this cask, and I married two Old Kempton bourbon casks together into this cask that was. It was a bourbon cask. We selected 5 out of 60, and it was one of those that smelt like creamy bourbon bananas. You could smell the texture, right? And I mean, you just know. You open a bourbon cask, you go, fumes, don't want that one. This one, you go, you can smell texture. So we put it into that, right? So two from Old Kempton married into this bourbon cask from Heaven Hill that smelt like creamy bourbon bananas, right? Stunning juice. So, and I knew it was good. And I let people taste it, like Jules from Whiskey and Ailment and Ray Daniel and all of these, and everybody wanted to buy it. And I said, no. And Ray Daniel will ring me every week wanting to buy this barrel. And one day he rang up and I see Ray Daniel on my phone. And I just said, fuck off. And I hung up, right? And strive for the forbidden, you see?
Yeah.
And everybody was striving for the forbidden. So there's a story and a name, right? We've got one called A Port in Tasmania, which is our political statement, because the ferries is one of the bigger financial cock-ups that Tasmania have done, because they've ordered 2 big ferries and they've got nowhere to unload the damn things, right? And they've been built. So we did one called A Port in Tasmania, and it was parked in Leith in Scotland for 12 months. So we put the ship. So we didn't get sued. We didn't call it Spirit of Tasmania. We called it Tasmanian Spirit, of course. Yeah. And then we put a Scottish flag on it, put her in the background there, and then we wrote in the caption, "It's the Leith we can do." And, so it just seemed appropriate. And it was a port cask. And I also have a label already designed and a name called A Port in Hobart. It's going to have a stadium in it, which is very, very controversial. Yeah, right. And there's a thing called the RSV Niuna, which is, I think, a CSIRO flagship. Can't go under the bridge to refuel, and it's based in Hobart. So there's a few things like that. So we're having a crack, and there's a lovely bar called HBC, which is a Hobart Brewing Company, and they're going to get moved out if the
the Red Shed.
Yeah. If they're going to get moved out if the Oval gets built, and so I've called that HBC in you. And so anyway, and I haven't got a whiskey for that one yet, though.
Hey.
Yeah, so it's sad
Got a
that I've got.
retrofit of whiskey
I probably
to the
spend
name.
more time on the labels than I actually do.
But
on
when
the
you get the whiskey, you can give the
Yeah.
the drain
Yeah.
barrels to the
Yeah.
brewery. They can make
Yeah,
a beer or stout,
yeah,
whatever. You know,
put
the
that on
story
there.
goes.
Yeah. So there you go. There's some stories on the labels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about smelling this barrel and going, this could smell the texture. Like,
Yeah.
is that how you assess your whiskey? Is it taste, or how do you know when you're going the right direction with a particular barrel? Or not the right direction. What's the process you go through?
Every day you learn something new. We made a lot of mistakes. And we still make mistakes, but you learn something new. And so one of the things I think we've got much better at is barrel selection, right? So if we're looking at a fortified barrel, we will look for must or mould. We look for astringency. In the wine industry, they probably call it VA. We look for sulphur. We reject those. The other thing we've learnt too is a lot of barrels that are stored outside with metal bands, not galvanised metal bands, you'll get a black stain that actually leaches through the stave to the inside. And I don't know if it's a organo-metal complex or something, but it's certainly, if it penetrates through the stave, which does quite often, results in significant bitterness. But it took us 5 years to learn that. So again, a lot of it is what we reject. If you smell a fortified barrel and you can smell forest fruits or port, maybe, sherries, you get Christmas cake and things like that, or muscat, you can smell the sweet muscat characters. They're the barrels that we choose, righto? And bourbon casks, again, if we're just hit with fumes, we reject those as well. So we're very, very selective. Then we will match the new make to those barrels. And particularly my son is getting much better at it than I am. Just don't tell him, because he tells me all the time that he's much better than I am. So, you know what he's like, his personality, yeah, very confident young man. And anyway,
Where's he getting from?
yeah, no, he is better than me, but just don't let him know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, that's how we choose the barrels, and it is every barrel is assessed. We do now trust our cooper. We have a cooper in Tasmania, and I find him barrels, and he finds me barrels, and I trust him now to find the barrels. And the best way, to see how good a barrel is you shave when you toast it, and you just sit there and go, there you go, there's the barrel. Yeah, there's the barrel, and that's how we choose them.
I was interested. You said it took 5 years to realise this one thing was happening, impacting the flavour in a particular way. Is there nothing like written down online or a book you could have read to tell you this stuff? Like, there's nothing out there. You have to learn. You have to learn yourself.
Well, I think probably our isolation leads to innovation, and we have to learn about our conditions. Our conditions are totally different from those that exist in Scotland and exist in the United States or Canada, and it's a learning process.
So it's still cutting edge. It's still pioneering. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways we've probably reinvented the wheel, but again, our conditions are quite different. So there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And we were talking to Lee from Backwoods, and he was saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
We're just about our conditions and everything, because our industry is only our recent industry is only 33 years of age, right, compared to hundreds of years in Scotland and Ireland and the US, and so learning all the time. All the time.
You're writing those manuals or those books as we go, kind of thing.
Both my sons have said, you writing this down? Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah. I'll probably just cut my head off and store it. Yeah.
But as one of the first sort of independent bottlings, I guess you'd call yourself the first independent bottler of the sort of the new age of Australian whiskey production. How do you see independent bottling progressing coming forward? Because there's, you've got a few friends in and around the game doing the same thing now, but more distilleries coming online. Do you expect there's more stock maybe coming online in future, more to select from?
That's an interesting question. If you'd asked me that maybe prior to 2023, I would have said, yeah, sure. I think it's going the other way at the moment. And this probably, I know we're probably, you've said we've got 2 sections of interview.
We're
This
drifting-
is
we're
probably
drifting
flown
into
into
the second
the.
part,
This is going into the next section.
Yeah, come on, Luke.
Yeah.
We're gently
Gently
progressing.
rolling,
Gently rolling.
so I don't get a break. Is that right?
We'll have a break after this one and come back to the
Yeah,
the following question.
in the last since about February, I think if you looked at discretionary spends and share prices and all sorts of things, about February 2023, things started to plummet, and I would say the majority of distilleries in Tasmania, at least, have either cut production or stopped production completely. It's an interesting time, and I've got to speak about this later on today. If you look at the brewers, they have input costs. They have a shelf life of 3 months, maybe. So the input costs for them to generate income have got to be continuous. They got into trouble there. I ran into an economist at Whiskey and Dreams in 2024. He said that the distilling industry in Australia is probably about 12 months behind the brewers. And fortunately, the distillers, they don't have to sell their product within that 3-month period. They hang on to it, and that's what a lot of them are doing. So the input costs have all been dropped off or cut back, and they're just hanging on to their stock, waiting for times to improve. And Dean Jackson in 2022 got up when I was speaking one day, and he said, in Tasmania, developing and proposed distilleries, 150 for Tasmania, right? That's dropping off significantly. There are distilleries with bits and pieces still on the floor that have never got past construction, and those that are construction, they're trying to sell it. And, I know of a number of examples of that. And then there are a number of distilleries in the last few weeks that are starting to go downhill. So I think the number is dropping away, and people are, just pulling the horns in, really.
Yeah.
And so it's a different time. It's a different time.
I'd love to chat some more about the wider industry. Before we take a break, quick one for you. What's the trajectory of Heartwood? Like, have you be able to sort of ride this rough time out? And where do you see your business going?
That's an interesting thing too. Prior to COVID, I did think that the industry was growing too rapidly, and I did that whiskey release called Market Correction, right?
Yep.
Right. And then COVID came along, and a lot of people were artificially supported through COVID. Now I think that's coming back to bite us. A lot of the younger generation than mine overcapitalized, overcommitted, and I think they're the ones that are slowly going down. And I can think of maybe 3 or 4 in Tasmania that are gone. I know of others that are in administration or facing administration as we speak. And there were a lot in the brewing industry that the same thing happened to them, overcapitalized because everything looked like beer and Skittles, and that's not what happened. And so I think we're in a look. It's difficult to say, but the next couple of years, I think we're going to be faced with a significant reduction in the number of distillers, even though there are new ones coming on board, and I fear for them. Right, I think we'll see a significant reduction in distillers in Australia. Significant. If you like, what are the canaries in the coal mine? Let's go locally. Burns Welding, right? They've been advertising stills, right? They've been advertising on Facebook and Instagram. They've been advertising stills that were ordered, and the orders have been cancelled, right? A lot of that happening from them. The other thing is our cooperage in Perth, Tasmania, right? They were doing a lot of new barrels. That stopped because new barrels got up to $3,000 each, Then it was refurbishing old barrels. And then all the smaller distilleries just started to stop ordering anything. And things have picked up a little bit for them. And you'd walk in, they had a clean floor. And that was never the case. Yeah. And I think even I heard maybe it was Craig from Bellarine saying that Stewie here, he said a lot of the smaller producers are certainly cut back on their orders. So there are canaries in the coal mine. Yeah. So interesting times.
Yep.
And how is Heartwood?
Oh yeah, that's where that was.
Have you navigated this?
Yeah,
Thank
you for bringing me back. This is absolutely. Thank you for anyway, we have maintained our size and just maintain our quality. If times change, there are a few issues that I face. One is finding the barrels that I want, and the other thing is excise. I don't get excise release. A distillery will, if they distill 70% of their own product, they will get some form of excise release. We don't. So I've got to negotiate cheaper prices of new make and things like that to make it viable. So I'm a bit slow in the last 12 months, but we're not expecting to grow unless things change dramatically. We'll just maintain the status quo. Yeah. But this year is going to be our biggest year ever.
Great.
Going against trend.
Excellent. Well, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk more widely about Australian whiskey.
Yeah, sure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
If you're looking for precise and portable CO2 measurement, look no further than the Halfmans GMT 2.0 digital CO2 meter, brought to you by Pentair Australia. As all brewers know, dissolved carbon dioxide can be a significant factor in the quality and taste of your final product. The Halfmans GMT 2.0 digital CO2 meter provides craft brewers with a compact and portable solution to measure CO2 on the go, allowing for quality checks across the entire production line. Handheld, cordless and rechargeable, the device gives you precision CO2 measurement as and when you need it, saving time and money and allowing you to brew the highest quality beer. And even better, right now Pentair is offering small breweries the opportunity to pair your new CO2 meter with a Halfmans Oxy2Go dissolved oxygen meter for a 10% discount on the total price. Or combine it with an ISD 2.0 in-pack sampling device for a 5% discount. Call the Pentair Food and Beverage Solutions team today on 1800 813 927 or email anz.sales@pentair.com to arrange a demonstration. This offer is available to breweries with capacity of less than 50,000 hectolitres per annum.
So an article that we were able to put together for Crafty Pint recently sort of looked at some of Australian whiskey's growing pains and how things are progressing. You've been talking a lot about growing pains or potential issues that the industry faces and has faced, I guess, for a long time now. Some would say that you're occasionally a little bit too negative on the side of things, but I hear a lot of positivity coming out of your bottlings and especially a lot of your words in conferences and things like Grainstock. So where do you see the next sort of 5 to 10 years going?
I actually do see a correction coming. I think economic pressures on newer distilleries will often results in them producing whiskey at a young age so they can generate income. And I think one of the criticisms of the Australian industry is that a lot of the whiskies are quite young, quite expensive, of course, and not dissimilar from one distillery to another. And I think one of the big problems is that youth hides any subtle characteristic a distillery may have. And so one way to maintain or gain a foothold in the market is to produce good quality product. If you do not produce good quality product and you're pumping it out for, economic, just to stay in the game, you'll fall out of the game much more quickly. And I think that's the biggest problem facing the industry at the moment.
Do you think quality, what I've seen, I guess, in a judging sense and in a reviewing sense, looking at Australian whiskies very closely, I've generally seen better maturation, better barrel selection. Would you agree with that? Do you think that the quality and the consistency has increased over the last sort of 5 years especially?
Yeah, I think the processes have certainly improved, but I think under current economic climate, I think that has had a significant influence on the quality. And I'd probably say some of the things are, you'll often have a distillery who will enter a competition with their best whiskey, but they fall away and they still try and release those at a similar price. And so things that will affect your position in the market quality, of course, but consistency. And, there are a lot of distilleries that will enter their better whiskies, which they should do, but they fall away dramatically within the distillery. And that's how you do damage. And that's how you damage your name. You can't afford to do that in a competitive market, which is probably saturated with Australian whiskey at the moment. A lot of distilleries, the bigger distilleries, established distilleries, have got stuff that they bottled 2 years ago still in storage in boxes, And it's very, very competitive out there at the moment.
Just
And it's gonna
damaging
be
to
very
the particular brand or damaging to Australian whiskey as a brand?
A bit of both. It certainly damages an individual brand, but yeah, I think it does damage to the Australian name as well. Yeah.
What would you like to see people doing more to sort of improve that side of things? I guess strengthen up their brands in future. What do you see? Any examples of people you think are doing a great job? Because we could sit here and obviously talk a lot about some of the great distilleries out there. But any thoughts on that?
Look, again, I think it's back to consistency of quality. If you go to those distilleries that are, let's say, 7 to 10 years of age, they have enough volume where they can produce consistent quality product to sell. The newer ones, they're the ones I fear for. The ones that are 5 years or younger, they are the ones that I fear for because, as I said, economic times are a little bit tougher and they release to try and generate income. And so I'm probably repeating myself, but I think there's significant issues there.
You can't cheat time.
No.
Essentially.
Time is that's what a lot of people do in the whiskey industry. You've always seen these shonky guys that said, I can make a mature whiskey in a week and a half. Time is part of it, is part of the grain and the water and all that sort of stuff. Time. Yeah.
Just a quick one on the uniqueness of what you do, the flavours. What do you think is unique about Australian whiskey? Because I could definitely point to some things that I think are, sort of world leading and incredibly different and distinctive about what Heartwood does. But what do you think are some of the flavour hallmarks and the sort of things that we might take to the world as uniquely Australian?
Yeah, I struggle with that because we're a big country. Lime burners of different conditions to King Lake, to backwoods, to even Corowa, from the difference between Corowa and say backwoods, and they're competing, of course, they're best of mates, but they're totally different environmental conditions, and we've probably talked about that. What's an Australian characteristic? You probably pick it up seeing more than I do. But I'm saying to you, even in Tasmania, where I am in Kingston, right, south of Hobart, my ABV goes up. Bill McHenry, who's probably 60 kilometres of the crow flies down at Port Arthur, his goes down.
Yeah.
It's cooler. And I don't know what an Australian characteristic is because, and the other thing that adds to that is because we're isolated, we do different stuff. And you see what's happening here at Grainstock, all those different grains out there that are, and you go, the potential to make different types of products is huge. So I don't know what an Australian characteristic is, mainly because of the geographic spread of distilleries around Australia. So I can't answer that.
Is that also something uniquely Australian about the sort of the lack of parameters, lack of rules? Like you can take so many approaches to make an Australian whiskey, essentially. You might not be able to do elsewhere.
And it's funny too. You look here, and there's a certain personality too with the people that run a lot of these distilleries.
And you see the beer industry as well. You're there's some pretty cookie people.
Just a little bit laissez-faire, a little bit more relaxed, and you don't see us in Japanese white coats, around us. So maybe the Australian characteristic is the Australian personality. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that at Grainstock already. The difference in approaches, the zaniness, and other parts of the world would not even think.
Wouldn't contemplate it, would they?
But here we're giving it a crack. So that's what's exciting.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. That's probably how you sum it up. You give it a crack. There you go.
I mean, that's sort of the liquid in terms of models that you think can be successful, going forward. Because I'm assuming that the economic situation has changed. you're obviously bottling. There's people with distilleries. There'll be some people that have visitor experiences. Some that don't. Some that are smaller. Some that are larger. Is there a model that you think this is the way? This is the model you should have to be successful going forward?
Look, again, a few years ago, I probably would have said a different answer than I would now. I think we've got a lot of geopolitical influences at the moment. I think there's an article. There's a few articles out of Scotland about the oversupply of Scottish whisky now. And I was talking to Craig from Edrington Group, and he said it's a real problem, the oversupply. And I think that's going to affect our future, the way we go. We're probably going to have to produce whiskies that are more competitive. I think the cheaper Scottish whiskies are going to come into Australia and they're going to get cheaper. The more expensive ones will still get more expensive. And we're going to have to compete with that. Now, what the model is to compete with that, I don't know, maybe it's a 700ml bottle at 46% at between $120 and $150 a bottle, right? But then you're still going to have quality and
Got to do more for less.
yeah, I think so. I think that's probably a way forward. But again, I think it's going to be very, very hard to predict. It's quite interesting, and I'll deviate slightly again. Again, when I ran into that economist, Whiskey and Dreams, 18 months to 5 years, he said, to pull out to get us out of this hole, and maybe something is more consistent and more predictable. I don't think it's predictable at the moment, right? And then Diageo and Brown-Forman in Queenstown with Dramfest, talking 5 years, right, to get out of this hole. And you've seen Diageo pull out of numerous investments in other distilleries around the world, including locally. And then Lark's new model, so is a 5-year model. So that's what seems to be from different sources. They're talking about 5 years to get us out of this hole that we're in. And I think with particularly influences, as I say, geopolitical influences, freight issues, Suez Canal, Ukraine being one of the biggest grain growers in the world, we've seen what's happened there. We know what's happened with tariffs in the United States. We've seen 3 Kentucky distilleries go down. Just recently, we've seen 6 or 7 in Ireland, 4 in France, 2 in Holland, all just going down the last. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very, very unpredictable. And to come up with a model for the Australian industry, I'm just going to say consistency and quality, and hold your place in the market, and then see what happens.
You think, you go. I was just going to say, like, to that point, how do you think we can attract a global audience to Australian whiskey? Because every time I've got to speak about your whiskies internationally, there's a huge level of interest.
That's great.
So how do we get to that international audience with our whiskies?
Because it's something that's very different to the beer industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
Most beer is sold locally.
Yep.
But, we were chatting the other day about how the market for a lot of Australian spirits is actually outside of these borders. So it's a very different, I guess, model in that sense from brewing.
I saw this question, thought this was really hard.
we found the hard one.
Yeah, found a hard one. I don't have an answer. I think it is. I mean, we know that the larger companies are trying to push themselves into the Chinese market, but the Chinese market, and and I've seen a lot of. I'm not going to call them puff piece articles, right? Been written about the potential for export, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's potential for export. We've got a lot of work to do. And I think it may come down to so I'll say that I think our industry is very disjointed, right? And I know we've got associations that look after states and look after Australia, but I think we probably need more federal support to give us more professional advice and support, and possibly even to fund a professional organisation as opposed to a committee, because a committee, there's jokes about committees, and that's legitimate jokes, right? Because if that's what happens, on committees, it's like a committee. Yeah. Anyway, so maybe we need support federally, federal support to have a unified body that then promotes the industry worldwide. And if you look at, I mean, the mining industry has a professional body, all of these other...
Wine Australia
have professional bodies. I think that's where we have to go. And then otherwise we're just going to remain disjointed and small and struggle to get our message across to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, 5-10 years down the line, where do you see Heartwood and where do you see Australian whiskey? If you could wave the magic wand and fix all the things that need fixing.
Yep.
Where would you love to see things?
I would like to see quality producers, consistent quality producers on the world market. But again, it's going to need a lot of effort and a lot of work. Heartwood will... I'm not that ambitious. I'm inherently lazy. I just thought I'd throw that at you. But, we will strive to maintain quality and always probably at the scale we are. I think the other day I thought about... here's a story for you. Just I'm deviating again. Louis and I have been approached by 10 separate private equity groups over the last 18 months to pick over the carcass of the whiskey industry in Australia, right? But then you explain to them, so Louis and I might be able to make you a better whiskey from the product you have, but then you've got to market it, sell it, store it, license it, all that sort of stuff. You're not even halfway there. I look at that and then I look at, okay, there's probably an opportunity there and it's probably a bit vulturistic to, start another business and consolidate a lot of the whiskies that are probably going to be available from distressed distilleries and then produce something and then sell it based on the names we have. And probably if I was 45 instead of 65, I would contemplate that. But Louis also got his own life too, so it's not as if something I hand out because he does his absinthe with Jack Lark and he's got his smoky cokey, which you've heard about. Yeah, that's hilarious. And he does that with another guy, and so he's got his own destiny, right? He's quite entrepreneurial. Heartwood will tick along as it is. Yeah,
that's a good side of the story. Actually, you talked about this as well. Yeah. The next generation that's coming through, Louis represents that, and there's many others like the Larks.
Yes.
So that should be something to look forward to.
To
see what they do with it.
Because on a lighter note, I quite often have drinks at my house, right? And I bring the old guard, Billy Boy, and all of the others, and I invite all the younger guys. Yeah. And we all get together, and because I have quite a big whiskey collection that probably some of those guys won't never be able to afford because they've gone up astronomically in price. We just open stuff, particularly after a few drinks. We even open more. And, we try and get the melding of minds. But yes, there has to be a transition. There has to be a handover. And that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know where that will go. But certainly, I've tried to impart knowledge on my son. Anyway, and Bill has done that with Christy and Jack, and so maybe that's our future. But, even looking at their marketing strategies you've seen and their use of social media, it's a different game. And the other thing too, I think we're finding is a problem is the Gen Zers don't drink. I think I saw an article a couple of days ago, they're 20% down on what the previous generation, the next generation. They want to be healthy, and so
they haven't had kids yet. Once they start having kids,
so and whiskey sales once the boomers die, whiskey sales may go down. And matured alcohol in barrel is usually generally more expensive. So you'll notice people, the younger generation, drinking white spirits and spritzers and all this sort of stuff, or not at all.
Yeah.
And so that's something we're going to have to adapt to as well.
Yeah. Well, if the world keeps going on its current trajectory, they'll need to drink anyway. So, as they get older, they'll be. We need something to get through this.
I always said two things. You go back to like the Rum Rebellion, and alcohol was currency. So if the world goes to shit, right, I'm a very wealthy man. All right, that's one. Or I invite my mates around, we sit down at the Bond store and we drink ourselves into oblivion. Yeah. So there's a couple of options for you.
There you go. And what better way to finish?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim, for your time.
Absolute pleasure.
And thank you, Luke, for joining us on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks, Tim.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
The Crafty Pints Pint of Origin Festival will be back in May 2026. Our Choose Your Own Adventure Beer Festival brings together thousands of beer lovers, hundreds of breweries, loads of Melbourne's best venues, and beers from all over the world. It's a real one-of-a-kind experience and hugely anticipated every year. Even better, it offers a massive platform for brands to connect with their customers in a meaningful way. If you want to engage with discerning drinkers, with beer venues and breweries, well, we'd love to chat to you about partnership opportunities. We've got the audience and the ideas to help you achieve your objectives at any budget level. Check out our partnership prospectus at pintoforigin.com or drop Craig, that's me, a note at craig@craftypint.com.
The Crafty Pint podcast is produced and edited by Matt Hoffman. You can get all your beer-related news and reviews on the Crafty Pint website, craftypint.com, and can stay up to date on future podcast episodes via our socials.
We wouldn't be able to produce the podcast or the website, events or festivals we run without the support of the beer industry, whether that's suppliers, bars, breweries or bottle shops. If you'd like to support the show or partner with the Crafty Pint in other ways, please reach out to Craig via the details in the show notes.
And if you're a beer lover who'd like to support what we do, you can join our exclusive club for beer lovers, the Crafty Cabal. Visit craftykabal.com for more.
And until next time, drink good beer.